Hello, I'm Jeff Krebs from Ion Software, and I'd like to welcome you to our webinar on GenerationAM and Ion Production Pipeline. EPP is an open source initiative designed for small to mid-sized studios that automates creation of the project structure, naming conventions, versioning, and updates between multiple applications, alleviating the normally time-consuming process to just a couple of mouse clicks. Over the next 45 minutes, I'll be discussing many aspects of generation. In some cases, it may seem that topics are revisited. What I'll be doing is introducing them and diving into greater detail later on. At the end of the webinar, we'll be hosting a Q&A session where you can ask questions to our development and product management team. As we all know, every VFX pipeline on this planet is different, and there are many ways to skin a cat. But since generation can be easily adapted to any existing workflow, there's even more ways to make your VFX life easier. Playback has never been faster, and managing your VFX project has never been more streamlined. Faster. In this case, that means generation is perfectly capable of playing back 4K files with more than 120 frames per second. Streamline means that generation is fully scriptable and all data is XML based to interact with the outside world. So let's get started. There are multiple ways of starting generation. Of course, you could double-click on the icon, but if you want to use generation just as a fast and convenient player, you could also drag any image from a sequence onto the icon. Generation will start up, ready for playback. As you can see here, the workspace is divided into two main areas: the storyboard, a visual representation of your project, and the play view, where you can play footage back and add paint annotations. To switch between these two, you can either press the Tab key on your keyboard or double-click on any item to play it back directly. When generation starts up, a new empty project will be created in the editing mode. There will be more on different modes later in this webinar. Empty projects are the ideal playground for quick review of shots or for creating a new project from scratch. Each project can contain an unlimited number of sub-projects, and in each of those subs, they can contain individual playlists. This brings us to one of the big advantages of generation. Generation is totally open to the outside world and hence can be tailored to fit any existing pipeline. For example, the entire structure is based on XML, which means the projects can be parsed with or even created from other applications, such as your favorite in-house shot tracking system. But not only the projects, also other components like chat, user metadata, and configuration files are XML based. In addition to that, generation is totally scriptable via Lua and Python, opening up a plethora of possibilities to further integrate into your pipeline and automate repetitive tasks. Examples of this are the buttons above the time ruler, which are user-definable since they reflect the folder structure and the scripts in Generation's scripting folder, as well as the user bar, which can be used to execute commands and run internal or external scripts. As you can see, you could even tailor Generation's functionality for different users, from the VFX supervisor to the roto artist. But back to handling footage. There are several ways of bringing footage into Generation. You can use the load media function. Either right-click anywhere in an empty space on the storyboard and select load media, or use the load media button directly above the play controls. From the Explorer window, you can now select an image file and Generation will parse the sequence and attach it to your mouse pointer as a thumbnail. Move the mouse to the desired location on the storyboard and left-click to drop the sequence or right-click to cancel the operation. You can achieve the same result by dragging files directly from the Explorer window. Either drag any image out of a sequence or drag the entire folder onto the storyboard. You could even drag multiple folders, or a top folder which contains multiple subfolders to add footage to generation. Multiple sequences will be added as individual clips ready for playback and review. In the storyboard, you can also arrange multiple versions of each clip. Just drag and drop a new version on top of the existing one. To change the length of a clip, either use the time ruler or right-click on the numerical fields to bring up a calculator interface. To change the order of clips, just click on the top area and drag the clip to a new position. The same counts for rearranging versions. Versions can be literally different versions of the same footage, or different items that make up a composition, such as green screen material, backgrounds, CG renders. So to make multiple items into a fusion composition, press B to box select them, and then press Ctrl C, and in Fusion, press Ctrl V to paste them as individual loaders. Alternatively, select Make Comp from the context menu. You could also drag Fusion compositions back onto the storyboard. Generation will parse the composition for savers and add the composition to the storyboard like any other clip. You'll be able to tell from the word comp in the upper right hand corner of the thumbnail that the clip is actually a Fusion composition. Right-click on the thumbnail and select Edit Comp to open and modify the composition in Fusion. Select Save Increment to create a new version of the composition. If there are multiple savers in the composition, pressing 1 to 9 on your keyboard allows you to select the saver you want to play back. Alternatively, you could just name the desired saver default in the Fusion comp, or press J to bring up the metadata dialog to modify other settings or enter or modify the metadata of the item itself. As we already mentioned, Fusion compositions can live directly inside Generation, and Fusion can be launched with a single click. But how cool would it be if this functionality would work with any other asset? Well, it does. Generation comes with event scripting. Event scripting means that whenever you drop a file into Generation, a script will be launched, which in this case examines the dropped file's extension and looks up a folder for another script with the same name as that extension. If a script is found, it's executed and tells Generation how to handle the dropped file. For example, when I drop this Houdini file directly onto Generation, the file is parsed by the script and the output that was rendered from Houdini is inserted onto the timeline. But there's more. If we bring up the metadata of the inserted clip, we see the values of the external scene and external app have been set automatically by the script. So now we could simply click on Open External App, and Generation launches that external program and loads the scene ready for modification. Of course, this works with other apps as well. For example, in this case, a Nuke script. All write nodes from Nuke are correctly represented in Generation's version stack, so you're free to work with the application of your choice, or mix different applications depending on your artist's personal preferences. Another way to link external apps is to have your program generate a metadata file like this one, which lives in the same folder as the rendered files. As you can see, it has the same name as the images and has a simple XML structure defining the metadata for external app and external scene. As soon as you have the image sequence in Generation, that metadata will be automatically set, allowing you to launch the external program easily. Alternatively, you can use yet another script to manually set the links in Generation or write your own. Since the entire approach is script-based, it's easy enough to adopt this workflow to any in-house pipeline. Tightly connected to metadata are other great management aids, which are the management icons, or micons, next to each clip. From top to bottom, they are status, Assign, Custom, and Notes. The last icon is the proxy indicator, which we'll discuss later in this webinar. Status allows you to set and indicate the completion status of a shot. Assign allows to assign a shot or task to any artist in your facility. Right-click on the micon to bring up a larger dialog. The S behind each entry is the Select button. Clicking on it will create a new sub-project containing only the clips with selected status or assignment. The value of the micons can also be used for filtered playback. From the menu, you can select, for example, only playback clips that are greenlit and have been worked on, in this case, shots by Eric. The content of the micons, as well as the actions that should be taken when they're changed, can also be set to the appropriate sections of the preferences. For example, you can set to automatically send an email to an artist when he or she gets assigned to a shot, including such diverse information as the link to the pre-made composition. The filter menu gives access to yet another level of filtering your clips. In this case, all the clips' metadata can be queried. The filter preferences allow to set up sophisticated filtering or change the color of the menu entry for fast visual reference. The custom micon gives a quick overview on selected metadata fields. The Edit button allows to define which fields of the metadata should be displayed in the menu. Notes show an overlay of existing notes for each item. Double-clicking opens the Notes editor, which basically is an integrated chat client. Each artist having access to the project can participate in the chat to quickly jot down ideas and comments. Again, these notes are stored as individual XML files, which means the comments could be added using other programs as well. Another way to add comments to your media are paint annotations. In the Play view, select Paint from the context menu. Paint annotations can be made valid for just a single frame or the entire clip. Following Generation's open project approach, the annotations are stored as simple TIFF files in dedicated folders. Again, this allows to add annotations from within other applications as well. While we're in Play view, let's have a look at the LUTs and guides as well. Generation could load a variety of LUT formats. 5 LUTs can be preloaded into the LUTs button, which provide a quick way to check your footage under different color conditions. Next to the LUT buttons, you see the Screen Player Color Adjust. Right-click to open the controls and fine-tune the colors. Similar to Clip's Color Adjust, which is applied to individual clips, you could even load CDLs here. A bit further to the right, you'll see the Guides button. Guides are overlays that allow you to judge things like safe frame violations and other cropping formats. Right-click on the button to load the guide and left-click on the button to switch any guide on or off. As you can see, multiple guides can be active at any time. And once again, even the guides are based on simple XML files. Feel free to create your own. The integrated proxy engine comes in handy to reduce network bottlenecking when your original files are sitting on a remote location. Either choose from one of the user-definable proxy resolutions or create a mirror of the original files on your local disk to speed up file access and playback. Again, we're going to go into greater detail on proxies later in this webinar. Next to the Proxies menu, you'll find the Notification menu. All changes made to status or assign are reflected here, and emails can be sent out to the associated artists. At the end of the day, you want to render out your dailies. Press R to bring up the Render dialog, which allows for a variety of different output formats and provides options to burn in timecode and annotations. Any type of screen navigation that's required within Generation is possible, and that includes the ability to zoom and pan the storyboard interface, time ruler, and the viewers. Included is the ability for full screen playback without any controls on the screen if you wish. The playhead in the time ruler can be used to scrub through the project, and the current clip is always centered above the play controls. Beyond this webinar, view the independent navigation tutorials, which will cover functionality and keyboard shortcuts to every imaginable navigation tool, including advanced looping playback methods and all metadata editorial tools, complete with frame and time counter feedback. Two navigation features I do want to point out on this webinar include the ability for clip comparison and stereoscopic playback. A key playback feature is the ability to display multiple clips simultaneously in the play view. To do so, select the clips that you want to view and click on MV for multi-view play in the user bar. The selected clips are now displayed in a grid style for convenient comparison. Press V to bring up the player layout and rearrange the position of your clips. Two clips can be even stacked on top of each other in order to slice between them. Back in the timeline, let's just select two items we want to overlay for slicing. Hold down B for box select and drag the rectangle around the two desired items. MV play again, and the clips are stacked on top of each other. Now you can slice between the two clips either on a still frame or in playback mode. Click directly on the pivot point of the slice bar to move the bar or set the pivot point to a different location. Click anywhere on the bar itself to rotate it around the pivot point. If you're working with stereoscopic footage, press Z in the play view to toggle stereoscopic playback on or off. Playing back stereoscopic files on a vast range of different display devices and with different encoding methods allows anybody in to check the workflow, from the VFX supervisor with extensive on-set technological requirements to the individual artist with standard 3D glasses to quickly check the look and feel of the shots. In this section of the GenerationAM webinar, we're going to discuss the editing and playlist functionality. Generation provides you with a set of editing functions that might feel a little different from other systems. Keep in mind that the project needs to be in edit mode to make any changes. Whenever things feel locked in Generation, have a look at the mode menu. When the project is locked, the flashing mode menu will kindly remind you that the intended operation can't be performed. There are multiple ways to trim a clip, and the functions can be performed in both storyboard and play view. To trim a clip's out point, you can either left click on the time out separator and drag with the mouse, or right click with the length field and enter a numerical value using the calculator. Yet another way is to hold down the left mouse button on the numerical fields and drag to the left and to the right to change the value. Watch how the following clips ripple up or down in time to accommodate the changes. If the footage is longer than the duration of the clip, semi-transparent half-height bars on the time ruler will indicate the head and tail. For rolling or slipping your footage within the clip's duration, left-click in the middle of the blue bar and move the mouse to the left or to the right. Alternatively, you could right-click on the clip infield and enter a numerical value, or click and drag on the clip infield itself. Watch how the relative media frame field changes when performing this operation. If during trimming your clip becomes longer than the available footage, Generation will display a dark gray area where there's no footage left for the clip. The actual duration of the project does not change in this case. When encountering such an out-of-footage area during playback, Generation will display the last frame of the sequence as a still frame. To remove the empty space, you could either manually move the trim out indicator or right-click in the time ruler and select Fit. Keep in mind that trim values relate to the clip itself, not an individual item in the version stack. In fact, this is one of the paradigms of generation that might feel a little different when looking at it for the first time. A clip, which is any of those vertical slots, can host different footage of arbitrary length. The playback duration is defined by the clip, not by the footage itself. If you want to add a new edit to the current clip, for example, to split longer clips into segments, position the playhead at the time you want the split to occur and press S. To add a simple dissolve between two clips, right-click on the separator in the time ruler and select Dissolve On or Off. The length of the dissolve can be adjusted by dragging the handles. To change the order of your items, hold down the left mouse button on the item you want to move and drag it to its new location. The separator between the clips will light up to indicate where the clip will be placed. As you can see, the original location of the clip still remains valid and can be used as a placeholder. As with all other operations in Generation, you can undo this by pressing Ctrl-Z. To cancel the operation, click the right mouse button while still holding the left button down. To move an entire clip with all versions to a new location, left-click in the empty area above the version stack and drag the clips to its new location. No reference will be kept at its original position. To insert a copy of an item or clip rather than moving it, hold down the Control key while dragging. To delete a single item, select it and press the Delete key. To delete an entire clip, select it by clicking in the empty area of the version stack and press the Delete key. To select multiple items, hold down B for box select and left drag with the mouse. This works both horizontally and vertically. To select multiple clips, hold down B and left drag in the empty space above the version stacks. If there are many versions in some clips, you may need to zoom in or out on the storyboard to get access to the entire area, as described earlier in this webinar. Another topic closely connected to editing is playlists. Playlists come in handy to try out different versions of the same sub. For visualization purposes, we have a reddish, greenish, bluish version of each clip here in the version stack. Let's assume the director came in to quickly decide on those versions. Open the playlist menu and select Create Playlist. The storyboard will dim and only the items of the current playlist are highlighted. The default playlist consists of the bottommost or current version of the sub. Playlists allow you to select one version out of every clip that you want to play back. Let's rename it by selecting Rename from the playlist menu. In the player, selected versions will now be played back. To return to a normal playback, select Deactivate from the menu. You can also clone, delete, and conform playlists by selecting the associated entry from the playlist menu. Select Conform from the playlist menu, and Generation will create a new version of every clip based on the selected items in the playlist, and put that version onto the bottom of the storyboard. Human interaction is always the best form of communication, but the ability to back up all discussions with chat and annotations allows for visual interaction with your team or peer-to-peer communication. It's vital for a team to be able to discuss changes or add comments to a shot, either within the facility or worldwide. There are multiple ways to communicate within Generation. The simplest method is to add text comments. To add text comments to a specific item, it's really simple. You right-click on the item in the storyboard and select Media Notes. Alternatively, you could select Media Notes from a context menu in the Play view. In the Comments window, every user having access to the project can view these notes. To track changes, notes are logged with a timestamp, computer, and username. On a project basis, you could add notes by selecting comments from the project menu. To allow access to chat systems from the outside world, the notes are stored as standard XML files, which can be modified by third-party applications as well. The notes icon on each item turns blue to indicate that the comments have been added to the item. Click on the icon to bring up an overlay containing the comments. From the item context menu, you could also select audio notes. This is great because it allows you to attach a WAV file containing, for example, spoken annotations from a conference call as a comment to the item. You'll notice a yellow A in the top right-hand corner of the item, and it means that an audio note has been added. Yet another way to communicate is to jot down ideas via paint annotations. In the play view, select Paint from the context menu. Paint annotations can be added to individual frames or to the entire clip. A highlighted bar on the bottom of the time ruler indicates that a clip annotation has been added. Highlight peaks indicate individual frame annotations. Similar to the chat XML files, the paint annotations can be modified by third-party programs as well. They live as simple TIFF files in a folder with the same name as the item as a subfolder of the annotation folder. These features, combined with Generation's advanced proxy system and mirror system that allow you to have proxies even on remote locations, flawless communication and interaction between multiple artists and facilities is guaranteed. With deadlines getting tighter, metadata is a big concern in any production pipeline when it comes to managing and streamlining your project. Metadata can come from the most diverse sources. This includes, but is not limited to, embedded in the file itself, for example, RED footage or OpenEXR file, living somewhere within your in-house shot tracking system, entered manually to a shot or task, and last but not least, it can be derived from file names based on your in-house naming conventions. Due to its open project approach, Generation is perfectly capable to handle all of the above and more. One obvious thing in Generation are the assign, status, and custom icons next to each item. The value of assign and status are saved within the XML project itself. Given an appropriate XML parser, it's even possible to modify these values from outside of Generation as long as the project is not in edit mode on any machine. Assign and status can also be used to directly trigger filtered playback. Let's say we want to review only the shots which need a redo and are worked on by Amy. That's as easy as selecting the appropriate values from the menu. Another option is to use the S directly in the icon, which is the select function. Clicking on the S will create a new subproject containing only those items with that specific status or assignment. The options for assign and status are defined in the associated section of the preferences. The custom icon takes the status and assign approach to the next level, since it can hold user-definable fields from any metadata, which allows you to tailor this menu to your pipeline's needs. Click on Edit to define which fields should show up in the icon. Select any entry from the metadata list and click on the arrow to add that field to the icon. You can even recolor the fields for easy visual distinction or change their order in the list itself. But what if you want to add metadata to your items which is not contained in the file itself? For these scenarios, the user file and user clip metadata come in handy. In the custom section of the preferences, you can define the name and the type of metadata. The user metadata is stored as standard XML files, which again means that they can be modified and populated by other programs as well. The main difference between them is the place where those files are stored. Similar to comments, user clip metadata lives in the metadata subfolder on the current project data folder and have the same name as the item itself. User file metadata is stored directly within the folder of the footage, which makes it really convenient to copy them along with the footage. Finally, you can use event scripting to extract metadata, for example, from the file name. By default, those event scripts live in Events, Metadata, subfolder of the Generation install. In this example, the script meta from name examines the file name of the footage. If the file name matches the in-house naming conventions, the appropriate metadata fields will be extracted, as you can see here. If the naming convention is not met, the script will throw a match error as shown here. This means you can also use a script to determine if the files delivered to you match your naming convention. As you can see, Generation's comprehensive implementation of metadata is made to fit into any pipeline, or to create and define your own. When working on larger pipelines, you might find yourself pulling footage off a network which might not be fast enough to provide the necessary bandwidth for playback, or maybe you're working with RAW files or EXRs which are computationally expensive to decompress or debear. Generation helps in situations like this by providing a sophisticated proxy and mirror system. The proxy menu defaults to base, which means that the original files are played back. Let's open up the proxy tool. On the top, you'll see 3 different proxy locations labeled Global, Local, and Network. Each location points to a specific path on your file system. The path for Global is set in the Generation config file and cannot be changed in the proxy tool. The paths for Local and Network can be edited directly in the proxy tool and can be individually set for each proxy. Network proxies are particularly useful if you're hosting review sessions with Generation to allow artists or clients who are connected, for example, via VPN, to participate in that session. Render source can be used to specify where the files are pulled from for creating the proxy. For example, if you already created a local mirror of the files, you might want to render the proxy from these files rather than pulling them over the network again. The quality switch relates to RAW files that have multiple resolutions encoded. For example, files from a RED camera. When set to full quality, the highest resolution with full debarring will be used to generate the proxy. You can create a number of different proxy resolutions in different formats, as well as mirroring the original files to your local hard drive. Click on any of the proxies to start the rendering. When rendering, Generation will skip existing proxy files and only create new proxies for footage that has not yet been rendered. Here's Generation's product manager, Eric Westphal, who will introduce the EPP overview, and following that, we'll have a practical look at EPP running within Generation and Fusion.
We are very pleased to introduce EPP, ION's new production pipeline. Enabled by ION software products, EPP is an open-source initiative that fine-tunes the production workflow. While our products are mainly targeted for the artist, we always include the possibilities to extend and streamline the software according to your studio's needs. Most studios have their very own conventions when it comes to naming compositions, where to store input footage, output material, textures, 3D assets, and so on. Often, these conventions are only documented to allow adaptation for others. It sounds simple. Only one convention has to be understood and put into practice, but by everyone in the facility. How often did you look for version 13 of the composition made by a supervisor in the compositing department's root folder, of the intro shot, of the commercial that lives in the projects folder of 2013 by the client agency on your file server? How often did you need to create a saver which points to various subfolders based on the version and name of the composition? Did you ever struggle to find files because a fellow artist had a slightly different opinion of where the files should go? How much does this take away from your productive time every day, and does this ever end up on your client's bill? Fusion's path maps can help with obeying these conventions by specifying abstracted tags for common paths. However, this functionality does only the lookup of already existing paths and is exclusive to Fusion. EPP can deliver a tremendous cost savings as the paths now live on global space that is accessible to all products. In contrast to conventions, EPP's approach is far less error-prone. A good pipeline takes care of specifying the paths for you. Artists won't have to care about the internals of the file system and can work directly with the shots and assets managed by the pipeline. Instead of relying on hard-to-maintain databases, EPP works around simple XML files that can be copied easily to other machines or facilities. The effort, cost, and complexity in driving the production pipeline are greatly reduced from the general artist to small or medium-sized studios. The Ion production pipeline includes a suite of scripts that provides a flexible and easy production experience. Fusion and Generation are combined to manage your projects based on your conventions. So what is under the hood? EPP is more than a collection of Python scripts that manages your file system for projects. It is a way of working that takes advantage of today's technology to provide faster, more efficient results. The scripts give you a fully functional starting point that takes care of all the folder structures for your projects, shots, and data. It is available in source code, so you can extend and modify it if needed. However, it will still be customizable without knowledge of programming by editing simple-to-understand XML setting files. These XML files hold preferences for conventions, but also act as a lookup to find the specific locations on your system. The convention is hidden away from the artist in the XML files. EPP has the following objectives: a simple out-of-the-box experience, start working and benefit immediately from a default production setup, highly customizable to fit your conventions, easily adapt every aspect to your conventions, open and accessible to everyone, extend to other applications if needed, nothing is hidden from you, work well with others, keep it simple, so other production databases or applications can be hooked up. Ion will help you to get set up. EPP is about making it simple and saving you money. We are there to help you get it right the first time.
We are now pleased to present the EPP feature overview as presented in Generation and Fusion. As mentioned, you can create a project and shot directory structures with the click of a mouse, including the ability to organize projects into subfolders. A good example of this use would be something like a television series that has seasons or episodes. So let's begin. In this example, I'll use a year and a client agency as a root folder for the project. Let's choose a production format for our project and leave the directory structure template as is for now. EPP created the project for us. This feature also applies to shots, so you can create root folders to distinguish between animatics. Like in here, let me create 2 animatic shots. During this presentation, I'll also be jumping in and out of the file system so you can see the process of automatic directory and file creation. Let's compare our actions on the file system. Here is our newly created project that sits in the root folders we chose, and similarly, the shots have an animatic root folder. Well, on the file system, this helps to structure your projects. You won't need additional clicks in EPP as the subfolders are part of the project and shot names. You may already be familiar with EPP's Add Tool function to create shots manually. In many projects, you might want to create shots from an imported sequence of clips. In this EPP project, I have a bunch of clips from an edit that was imported with GenerationEDL import. What we want to do now is create a shot from each individual media clip. We want to use the original file name, or actually, just the part right of the file name as the shot name. All we need to do is select all the clips that we want to take into account and use EPP's Add Shot from Media tool. In this dialog, we are asked to select a parsing template. This is a predefined regular expression that parses the path of the shot into a clean shot name that we prefer. As you can see in the preview of the first file name, our shot name with the first pattern would be MVI_1441. There is another pattern called base name after underline, which strips out the first part of the name, so our shots will be named 1441 based on their original clip name. Now, we only need to select the template for the directory structure and the insert position of the stand-ins. Once I hit the Add button, you can see how EPP creates all the shots and stand-ins in the background. Don't panic at this message. We get this dialog which warns us that a shot already exists. It's because the edit uses the same media in various places, and we could ignore all these occurrences. We'll do all our post-production work on the unique footage anyway, and can later on easily clone the clip in Generation. As you can see, all the duplicate use of the media won't create duplicate shots for you. Let's have a look how this looks in our project. Here is the shot directory, and as you can see, EPP created all the shot folders with our custom directory structure for us. Think of the time savings over having to do this manually. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. Let's focus on the first shot of this project. We want to make a simple color correction in Fusion. So let's switch to Fusion. If you use the EPP installer, you'll notice a new EPP menu in your menu bar. This gives us quick access to the EPP tools. Let's quickly save this empty composition into the right location of our EPP project. I start the EPP Save As dialog, which gives me quick drop-downs to the correct project and shot. I'll choose the name of the first shot. The dialog suggests the name as composition name and automatically sets version 1, as this is our first composition in the shot. This will also set the format for the comp according to the EPP project. Now let's import the project source clip into the composition. I'll adjust the length of the shot by dragging the loader on the timeline while Shift is pressed. And I'll quickly change the look of the shot by using a color corrector. I'll neutralize the white balance a bit and pump up the gamma. I may darken the shadows a tiny bit. Okay, that'll do for now. The next thing I'd like to do is create the saver and all the required folders for it. Since EPP has a tool called Create Saver, and as you can see in the dialog, it sets the right project and shot. It suggests the saver to be named according to the shot name. You might create additional savers using different names, and it'll match the version of the composition. I'll choose the format, although I'll be able to change this later on. So there you go. EPP created the saver for us, handled all the paths, and created the necessary folders. I'll save the comp and hit the render button. Now that this is done, let's take a look how easy it is for EPP to import the comp back into the Generation project for revision. Another feature of EPP is called Update Shot. I may update all the shots, but in this case I'm only interested in the first shot. We have an option to filter out compositions other than the shot name, as we're not interested in the pre-comps, keys, etc. Once I hit Update, EPP will insert the composition with our rendered frames on the top of the clip. It also adjusts the edit according to our bottom version. As usual, Generation handles parsing the composition for the correct saver. Now I can change the order and use Generation's player and review and compare it to the original. If we wanted to change something in the comp again, we can use EPP's Save New Version tool. It'll ask us on which savers we want to use to adjust a specific version to stay in sync with the original composition version. The composition is now saved as version 2, and the savers were modified accordingly. Let's add some changes into the color correction tool, and I'll render this in the background for now. Even while we're still rendering, we could already import the composition into Generation with the Update Shot tool. The frames might still be missing, yet we can still see any rendered images. Let me make this the last version. You can see the updated frame now while it's still rendering in the background. Now we can easily compare the different versions. As I mentioned before, you'll get access to all the documentation of EPP with the details for all customization options, but also the source code if you'd like to adapt it and contribute it back to the project. As it's released with a non-destructive open source license, you won't have any restrictions for use and modifications of EPP. Now I'd like to introduce to you Eric Westphal, Generation's product manager, and he'll let you know about some new features released in Generation 3.1.
GenerationAM 3.1 comes with a bunch of new features and literally hundreds of fixes and improvements. Amongst the new features are such diverse items as support for the tangent wave panel, new stereo modes for checkerboard and difference, per clip stereo adjust for interocular XY offset and zoom, new convenient hotkeys for paint tool, color adjust, stereo adjust and flip-flop, along with stereo hotkeys to easily switch even in the darkest review room. And last but not least, dramatical speed improvements when loading or switching larger projects.
Our QA session. You can use your chat window now to ask questions.